Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to really dig into a company called Orbis Medicines.
Oh,
They're working on some pretty incredible stuff in the world of medicine. They're this biotech company basically trying to deliver these powerful drugs called macrocycles as pills.
yeah, I know, right? Like, who wouldn't want to just pop a pill instead of getting a shot?
Exactly. And the really interesting thing is that two big players, Novo Holdings and Eli Lilly, have made big investments in Orbis.
It's a pretty big sign that Orbis is onto something special.
So we're going to explore exactly what Orbis is doing and, more importantly, try to understand why these big names are so interested.
It'd be fun.
All right, so let's start with the basics. What exactly are these macrocycles everyone's talking about?
So macrocycles, they're kind of like the heavy hitters of the molecular world. They're large, complex molecules that have this incredible ability to bind to very specific targets in the body.
Okay, so I'm picturing these like tiny little machines, super precise, going right where they need to go.
Exactly. It's like a lock and key mechanism. And because of that precision, they hold immense potential for treating all sorts of diseases.
That makes sense, but then the question is, why aren't we seeing more macrocycle drugs already? What's holding them back?
Well, there's a catch, and it has to do with how we get these macrocycles into the body.
Right.
Historically, it's been a challenge because they're not easily absorbed when taken orally.
So like they just get broken down in the stomach before they can do their job.
Exactly. The stomach is pretty good at breaking things down.
Yeah.
And large molecules like macrocycles have a hard time surviving that journey. That's why up until now, most macrocycles have had to be given through injections.
Ah, so that's what Orbis is trying to solve.
Yep.
Making macrocycles that can survive in pill form.
Exactly. It's kind of like the holy grail of drug delivery.
Makes sense that investors would get excited about that.
Yeah, and that's where their NGen platform comes in.
Okay, I've heard that name mentioned a few times now.
It's their secret weapon, really. Imagine a lab where robots and artificial intelligence are working together to design and test hundreds of thousands of potential macrocycle structures.
So basically speeding up the whole process of finding the right combination.
Exactly. It combines automated chemistry with machine learning. It allows them to experiment with so many possibilities that would take forever to do manually.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. So it's kind of like a super-powered research team in one platform.
That's a great way to put it.
So I get the tech, I get the potential.
Hmm.
But let's get back to these investors. Novo Holdings and Eli Lilly. They're not exactly known for throwing money around for just any idea.
True.
What specifically do you think they see in Orbis?
So let's start with Novo Holdings. They have a big focus on transformative healthcare investments, especially in the early stages.
So like the venture capitalists of the medical world?
Yeah, kind of. They're always looking for the next big thing that could disrupt the industry, and clearly they see that potential in Orbis.
Okay, makes sense. But what about Eli Lilly? They're a massive pharmaceutical company. What's their angle here?
Well, Eli Lilly specializes in areas like diabetes, oncology, immunology areas where injections are often the standard way of delivering drugs.
Right.
So for them, Orbis's technology represents a huge opportunity to shift their existing treatments into a more patient-friendly format pills.
That's a brilliant strategy. It would give them a huge edge.
Exactly. And for patients who rely on regular injections, especially those with chronic conditions, imagine the impact that a simple pill could have.
Yeah, talk about a game changer.
Right. Suddenly, managing their health becomes so much simpler and more convenient.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, but let's talk numbers for a second. How much are these investors actually putting into Orbis?
So they secured a pretty impressive 26 million euros in seed funding back in 2024.
Oh.
And just this month, they announced a whopping 90 million euro Series A funding round.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You said Eli Lilly was a big part of that?
They were actually the lead investor in that round, which shows their strong belief in this technology.
So they're not just dipping their toes in the water, they're diving right in.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this young company with a potentially revolutionary technology and big-name backers. But they must have some serious expertise behind them as well, right?
Absolutely. One of the co-founders, Christian Heines, is a real pioneer in the field of macrocycles. He's actually co-founded another successful biotech company focused on macrocycle drugs. So he knows this space inside and out.
Okay, so he's got the scientific chops. But what about the business side of things?
Well, they recently appointed Morten Greigard as CEO. He's got over 20 years of experience in the life sciences.
Oh, wow.
So he knows how to navigate the complexities of the industry and build successful biotech companies.
So they've got the brains, the experience, the money, and the technology. Sounds like a recipe for success. But they're not alone in this race, right?
Oh, definitely not. The world of oral macrocycle drugs is getting pretty competitive.
So who else is out there trying to crack this code?
Well, there's Bicycle Therapeutics, for example. They're another company exploring macrocycle drug development, and they're actually a bit further along in the clinical trial process than Orbis is.
Ah, so they're a real contender.
Uh.
How does Orbis plan to stand out in this crowded field?
Well, besides their NGen platform, which we talked about, they're also being very strategic about how they approach the whole drug development process.
Right.
They've partnered with a company called Vivtex, which specializes in analyzing how substances are absorbed in the gut.
Interesting. So they're not just creating the molecules, they're making sure they can actually survive the journey through the digestive system.
Exactly. They're thinking about the whole picture, and that's what sets them apart.
Makes sense. All right, so we've covered what Orbis does, how they do it, and who's backing them. But what about the bigger picture? Why should our listeners be paying attention to this company? What's the potential impact here?
Well, think about it this way. Orbis isn't just developing new drugs, they're potentially changing the entire way we deliver those drugs.
Yeah.
Imagine a future where people with chronic conditions like diabetes, cancer, or autoimmune diseases could manage their health with a simple pill instead of injections or infusions.
That'd be huge.
It would be a game changer for patients in terms of convenience, compliance, and overall quality of life.
I see what you mean. So it's about more than just creating new treatments. It's about making those treatments more accessible and easier to manage.
Precisely.
It's a pretty powerful vision. But you mentioned earlier that Orbis is still in the preclinical stage,
That's right.
meaning they haven't started testing their drugs in humans yet.
Yep. Still early days.
So while the potential is exciting, it's important to remember that they still have a long way to go.
Definitely.
But their early success, the backing of industry giants, and their innovative approach all make them a company to watch very closely.
I agree. They're definitely one to keep an eye on.
I think this has been an amazing first look into the world of Orbis Medicines.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Before we move on, I want to leave our listeners with a thought. If Orbis succeeds, if they really crack the code of oral macrocycle delivery, what other medical frontiers could be unlocked?
That's a great question.
It really makes you think about the possibilities, doesn't it?
It does. I'm excited to see what the future holds for them.
Me too. We'll be back after a short break to delve deeper into that question and explore the potential impact of Orbis's work.
Sounds good. So we've been focusing a lot on Orbis and their approach to oral macrocycles.
Right.
But it's important to remember they're not the only ones trying to solve this puzzle of oral drug delivery.
Oh, yeah, I bet there's a whole world of research going on in that area.
Absolutely. There are a lot of scientists and companies looking at different ways to deliver these large, complex drug molecules orally.
Like what? What are some of the other approaches out there?
Well, one approach is to focus on protecting the drug itself.
Okay.
These delicate biologic drugs, like proteins, need a little help surviving the harsh environment of the stomach.
Right, makes sense.
So researchers are working on things like special coatings that can encapsulate the drug.
So it's like giving the drug a little shield.
Yeah, exactly. It protects the drug until it reaches the intestines where it can be absorbed more easily.
Clever.
Another area of research is nanoparticles.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
These are tiny particles that can act as delivery vehicles.
So they carry the drug directly to where it needs to go.
Precisely. It's like a targeted delivery system.
Wow. It sounds like there's a lot of exciting work happening in drug delivery these days.
Definitely. It's a really dynamic field.
Okay, so with all these different approaches being explored, what do you think makes Orbis's focus on macrocycles stand out, especially to big investors like Eli Lilly?
Well, remember how we talked about their NGen platform?
Yeah, their super-powered research platform?
Exactly. One of the key advantages of that platform is that it allows Orbis to design these smaller, cell-permeable macrocycles.
Right, we talked about that a bit, but can you remind me what cell-permeable actually means?
Sure. It basically means the molecule can pass through the cell membrane.
Which is like the outer layer of the cell, right?
Yep. And for a drug to work, it often needs to get inside the cell to do its job.
Ah, okay.
And smaller molecules, like the ones Orbis is designing, have a much easier time doing that.
Makes sense. So it's not just about getting the macrocycle to survive the stomach. It's about making sure it can actually reach its target once it's inside the body.
Exactly. You got it.
And you said that Eli Lilly seems particularly interested in Orbis.
Right.
Why do you think that is? How does Orbis fit into their overall strategy?
Well, if you look at Eli Lilly's areas of expertise, diabetes, oncology, immunology, a lot of their current treatments rely on biologic drugs,
Okay,
which, as we talked about before, are often delivered through injections.
I see where you're going with this.
Orbis's technology could be a game changer for them. If they can develop oral versions of their existing treatments, it would be a huge win for both them and their patients.
Right. No more needles.
Yeah,
I bet patients would be thrilled about that.
definitely. It would make treatments much more convenient and less intimidating.
And probably lead to better adherence to treatment plans as well.
Absolutely. It's all about improving patient outcomes and quality of life.
I'm starting to see how this all fits together.
It's a pretty exciting puzzle.
It is. But you mentioned earlier that Orbis is still in the preclinical phase.
Yeah, they haven't started testing their drugs in humans yet.
So it could be a while before we see these treatments become a reality for patients.
That's true, but their preclinical results have been very promising.
Okay, good to know. But even if their technology works, bringing a new drug to market is a long and expensive process, right?
It definitely is.
So what makes investors so confident that Orbis can pull this off?
I think it comes down to the potential impact.
Right.
If Orbis succeeds, they could revolutionize treatment for a whole range of chronic diseases.
Yeah, we talked about diabetes, but there are so many other possibilities too.
Exactly. Think about conditions like cancer, autoimmune diseases, inflammatory diseases.
The possibilities are endless.
That's what has investors so excited. The potential rewards are huge.
So it's a bit of a gamble, but one with a potentially massive payoff.
Exactly. And Orbis seems to be making all the right moves so far.
All right, well, we've talked a lot about Orbis and their vision, but we haven't really talked about their competition.
Right. We should definitely touch on that.
Because I imagine they're not the only ones trying to bring oral macrocycle drugs to market.
Definitely not. The next part of our deep dive will explore the competitive landscape and the challenges that Orbis faces in this exciting new frontier of medicine.
So last time we were talking about the competition in this whole world of oral macrocycles.
Right. It's heating up.
Yeah. And you mentioned that Bicycle Therapeutics is a key player.
They are, yeah. They're definitely one of the companies to watch in this space.
So we know they're also focused on macrocycles. But what exactly are they doing? What's their strategy?
Well, they're actually working with a slightly different type of macrocycle than Orbis.
Yeah.
They're focusing on bicyclic peptides.
Bicyclic peptides.
Yeah, think of them like mini macrocycles. There's still these large ring-shaped molecules, but they're a bit smaller and simpler in structure.
Ah, okay. So how are they using these bicyclic peptides?
They're developing them as targeted therapies, mainly for cancer treatment.
So they're going after a different set of diseases than Orbis.
To some extent, yeah. But there could be some overlap down the line.
Interesting. So it sounds like both companies are working with macrocycles, but they have different focuses.
Exactly. Different approaches, different strengths.
So how does Orbis differentiate itself in this competitive landscape? What makes them stand out?
Well, for one, their NGen platform gives them a significant edge in terms of speed and efficiency.
Right, that superpowered research platform we talked about.
Exactly. It allows them to design and test so many different macrocycle structures so quickly.
It's like they're accelerating the whole drug discovery process.
That's a great way to put it.
And we also talked about their focus on creating smaller cell-permeable macrocycles.
Right. That's another key advantage. Smaller molecules are just better at getting into cells and doing their job.
It's like they've optimized their macrocycles from the ground up for oral delivery.
Exactly. They're thinking ahead.
Okay, so we've got the biotech companies like Orbis and Bicycle Therapeutics leading the charge. But what about the bigger pharmaceutical companies?
They're definitely not ignoring this trend.
Okay, good. So they're getting involved in the oral macrocycle game too.
They are. Companies like MSD, for example, are already in late-stage clinical trials with a macrocyclic peptide drug for treating high cholesterol.
Wow, that's pretty far along.
It is. It shows that the big players are taking this technology seriously.
It makes sense, right? If these oral macrocycles work, it could be a huge shift in the pharmaceutical industry.
Absolutely. It could change the way we treat all sorts of diseases.
So it's an exciting time to be watching this space unfold.
Definitely. But it's important to remember that there are still challenges ahead.
Right. Even with all this innovation and investment, bringing a new drug to market is never easy.
Exactly. One of the biggest hurdles for Orbis and any company in this field is proving safety and effectiveness in human trials.
Right. They still need to show that their drugs work in people and that they're safe.
Exactly. And that process can take years and cost a lot of money.
And even if they get through clinical trials, there's still the whole manufacturing challenge.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Scaling up production to meet potential demand can be really tricky.
And then there's the whole regulatory landscape to navigate.
Right. Getting approval from agencies like the FDA is a long and complex process.
It sounds like there are hurdles at every step of the way.
There are, but the potential rewards are so great that companies like Orbis are willing to take on these challenges.
That's the spirit. So even though there's a lot of work to be done, it sounds like there's a lot of optimism surrounding Orbis and the future of oral macrocycle drugs.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a real sense that we're on the cusp of a major breakthrough in medicine.
It's been fascinating learning about all of this.
It has, hasn't it? It really makes you think about what the future of medicine might look like.
I know. Imagine a world where we can treat all sorts of diseases with simple, easy-to-take pills. That would be incredible.
It would be revolutionary.
Well, thanks so much for taking us on this deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope you found this exploration insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Remember to stay curious, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.